What is progressivism? Actually, where does it come from? What is its essence? I believe the essence is in the sentence I've written here. The cosmos doesn't care about us, or in other words, the cosmos is indifferent to us. At any time, it can send an asteroid heading toward Earth to come to Earth, and then we would have problems, just like the dinosaurs did. So I think this starting point is the best one for the trailer and actually for the whole story of progressivism. The cosmos, it doesn't care about us. I know that some of you might jump up and say, atheist, well, the cosmos doesn't care about us. That's atheism. But here I'm talking about the cosmos, not about God. God might exist. He could be personal, he could care about us, he could perform miracles from time to time, but the cosmos, as we see it, doesn't care about us. What is true for a person who may be an atheist and doesn't believe in God is essentially also true for a believer and a religious person. Namely, that we have only one tool at our disposal to understand the cosmos and at some point even to control it, and that tool is science. We have reached this point today as civilizations because some brilliant minds before us discovered the scientific method and applied it to technology in such a way as to do good things. Because to understand the world means to discover that mathematical mechanism behind this mathematical structure, which is the universe. And if you have that mathematical structure, with its help, you can further build devices with which you can control the cosmos. Yes, meaning to push away the asteroid that's coming toward you, or to make medical devices with which you can solve certain diseases. That's how progressivism starts. With science, with the physics, chemistry, and biology textbooks, because that's where what we've understood so far about the cosmos is explained. And applied science is technology. How can you use technology to your advantage? Wouldn't you want to live better, live longer, work less? And why not? To take trips to distant places you want to visit. Note, this also applies to religion from a religious perspective. God gave man a gift, namely the mind, to understand science and use it for his own benefit. If man does not use science, he does not use this gift, yes. It would be like that man who gets some money in his pocket, walks down the street and shouts, "I'm hungry, I have nothing to eat, I have nothing to eat," even though he can take the money out of his pocket at any time and buy himself something to eat. And here is the promise of progressivism, namely that we can use science, just as our predecessors did, to understand the cosmos and to intervene through technology, through what we have learned with the help of science. Why do we intervene? To live better tomorrow than today. Thank you. So that tomorrow cancer will be gone and our children won't suffer from cardiovascular diseases. To live? Why not 100 years or more? To work? Why not less? And to enjoy this life about which we may not know what it truly is. Yes, maybe it is the greatest gift we have, but let's enjoy it. As you've seen, as defined so far, progressivism is not very different from other currents, including conservatism, because conservatives also put man at the center. I mean, we do things for people so that people feel good, so that people live better. Just keep in mind, generally, conservatives, and most of them, that's why it's called conservatism, want to keep things pretty much the way they are. The religious ones even have an argument. They say, well, hold on a second. If the world was created by a creator, right, who are we, as humans, to change the course of the world that was made by that creator? So, if the world was made by a creator, who is man to change that world? Yes, and in a way, such an attitude is understandable, but people are different. Some of us want to live like people did a century ago. Others like people from 1 or 2 centuries ago. Maybe they want to retreat somewhere in the countryside. Although, keep in mind, even conservatives use mobile phones. Most of them do, but that's another discussion, right? But there are other people, others among us who say, I don't want to live the way it was 200 years ago. No, no, no. I'm willing to change and I want to live better tomorrow than I do today. And we'll come back to this because, you see, people are different. And progressivism is one of the isms, meaning those, let's say, political currents that try to define the collective space without imposing it. And this collective space will always be a negotiation between conservatives, progressives, liberals, social democrats, and so on. Yes. I'll return to the foundations of progressivism, since some of you may have noticed these core ideas closely resemble those of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment period, a few hundred years ago, when man was discovering the cosmos with his mind and saying, I can understand it, what a big deal. I can see the movement of the planets in the sky and understand that movement. It was truly a revolution that gave people confidence at that time. And along with the Enlightenment ideas that man can understand the world, related ideas appeared as well, that man can control the world. This pay attention comes with a responsibility, and that man is a free being who has rights. Satisfied. So from there we have these ideas of fundamental human rights. The right to private property. This is my property, the right to freedom of opinion, the right to have your own religion, or, well, your own ideas in your private space, and so on. What we now call fundamental rights. So the question is, how does progressivism differ from Enlightenment? And I sat and thought about it, and I came to the conclusion that you'll see in what's coming up now in this trailer, but actually we'll also see in the following videos, that essentially we need to think that we are in a different situation now than we were a few hundred years ago. So essentially progressivism is an enlightenment adapted to our times in which the world is changing very quickly, and as such you have to react very quickly. Adapted to our times, in which we understand very well this time that we truly are equal and we fight for each other's fundamental rights. Because we also understand very well that we all want to contribute to society. Essentially, it's this idea that together we're trying to build today a better life than yesterday, and tomorrow a better life than today. From the start, it must be said that if progressivism takes science as its starting point, it also takes the limits of science just as well. This is easy to understand. Science does not claim to explain everything. Science is a method of understanding the world that has its limits. And right now, science has two fundamental limits. It cannot say what this world is. Truly, we do not know the ontological nature of the universe. What this universe really is, we do not know. This is a limitation of science. Science only describes the world through this garment that we call mathematics. Yes, the first and second limitations. At the present time, science does not tell us who we really are. What is this consciousness of ours? What is this act of subjective perception? How is the subjective world constructed, and why do we perceive it the way we do? Namely, through subjective sensations, a color, a pain, a pleasure, all these sensations. So we perceive the world through these subjective sensations. And this is another limitation of science at the present time. Although science knows quite a lot about neurons, it doesn't know how those neurons manage to construct an image of the world and give us an image of the world, or how those neurons manage to give us a subjective perception. So basically, how does consciousness arise? If we understand this, we realize that progressivism can never be a dictatorship. Well, that's if it's not abused, because of course anything can be abused. But it can't be a dictatorship because it can't impose something as long as you don't know it. You can be dictatorial with your own car. You still say steering wheel to the left, the car has to go left. Steering wheel to the right, the car goes right. Because you actually know. You know the ultimate truth. And then about that car, that's how it was built. But you don't know the ultimate truth about people. And so, man has freedom. And progressivism gives him this freedom because it says, I don't know what man is. Man has freedom, and I imagine this freedom as a kind of circle. This is the inner circle of my private life, and in this inner circle of my private life, I have freedom. I have the freedom to organize myself, to organize my private space with myself. How I want to say what I want, to think what I want, and so on. There are several private spaces, circles, that people often see as public spaces. What is public space? It's the space between the circles, when we walk down the street and cross paths with each other, or the space where the circles touch. That is public space. And progressivism is an ism, just like conservatism, like liberalism, like social democracy. It gives us an idea about how to organize this shared public space. This spatial organization, shared, free, shared, is done within democracy. Which, attention, democracy does not mean that people vote and whoever gets 51% puts in whatever president they want. Democracy means that it must have individual freedoms, the fundamental human rights. For anyone, even if you are the majority, even if you have 99% yes in parliament, it is mandatory in a democracy to defend the fundamental rights of the other 1% of the population. And so, progressivism is and has the right to exist in a democracy because it respects these fundamental rights. Just like social democracy, liberalism, conservatism, and so on. That's why when I hear some people say, well, progressivism is neo-Marxism, that seems to me like the biggest nonsense, and I think it's an unfair attack. It's clearly a political attack, but it's unfair. Why? Because this word Marxism has no place in progressivism. Progressivism respects individual property, respects a person's freedom of choice, their individual freedom. Marxism does not. Marxism takes away your individual property, and it's Marxism that destroys and tramples on your individual freedoms. There's one more important thing, similarly. Because progressivism starts from science and recognizes the limits of science, the two limits of science, meaning what the world itself is and what man is. Progressivism doesn't try to fundamentally change the world. That's not what it's interested in. It's not interested in changing the world in the future. So these ideas, for example, of the new man that communism wants to build, it doesn't want to change the person. It wants the person to feel good as he is, with all his weaknesses, with all the problems he has, to live tomorrow better than today. Yes, that's what he wants. But he doesn't want to build a new man, like the communists used to say. Yes, in a certain way, which would be a perfect man and blah blah and blah blah. Again, it doesn't fit with nationalism. I don't mean patriotism, loving your country. I'm talking about that aggressive nationalism. Like, we are the smartest in the world. Yes, the Dacians here, the Dacopaths and so on. Again, it doesn't add up. Because that's not the purpose of progressivism, to say, hey, we're making this Romania the best, so to speak. That we dominate the whole world. That we are the smartest in the whole world, and so on. No, that's not the purpose. The purpose is for people to live better tomorrow than today. Whether that person is Romanian, English, Japanese, old, young, or from one minority or another, in any form they may be. We also need to discuss practical matters, since we already have many ideas. But in practice, how does progressivism help you? What ideas does it give you? Just like free conservatism, social democracy, and so on. What ideas does it give you, which you can apply in such a way that you can truly build a better world tomorrow than today? Or better said, so that tomorrow you can live better than today? Well, progressivism essentially has two foundations, and we'll see right away how it differs from the other political currents. The first foundation, or let's say the first branch, is scientific progress. Scientific and technological progress. I won't insist further, but in progressivism, we want a society that is open to scientific knowledge, that is scientifically educated. Yes, it has one, and it's very important. I'll discuss the economy later, but for now, yes. You can't have a high-performing economy at a global level today if it's not an economy based on technology. If you're unlucky, you just rely on oil and try to make money, but that's not our topic. Normally, you have to build a society that is technologically developed. Technology relies on science, so a society must keep scientific knowledge alive, where people learn not only when they are in school, but also later on. Yes, a society that adapts, that understands the scientific changes and technological advances happening in the world in such a way that it can adopt them itself. Yes. And a society that contributes to the advancement of global knowledge, even if just a little, but contributes, so basically it has active research, active scientific research. But anyway, I talk more about this in the upcoming videos. But the second branch is social progress, meaning we want progress, but we want progress for everyone. And, after all, part of progress can be achieved, yes, not only by having scientific progress, but also social progress. That means we need to organize ourselves better and organize ourselves better. Not just because the economy is doing well otherwise, but also because we have those early principles of the Enlightenment, that we are all brothers on this earth. And here's a small example I heard from Sam Altman, who, as Sam Altman said, put it like this. Dear people, in the gentle singularity he said this, dear people, if we want the world to progress with the help of artificial intelligence, the first thing we need to do is make artificial intelligence available to everyone. We shouldn't make it so that only a few people can use it. If more people use it, more minds are involved. And at some point, progress, the next step in progress, will come from one of them. So, in other words, it means to empower society. So social progress means empowering every member. Maybe someone was born in the countryside and didn't have good teachers. That person could get lost. But if he's in a society that values scientific knowledge, yes, then that young person, that student or whatever he is, right? He will be given tools so that he can still have access to knowledge and scientific education. Because maybe the next discoveries will come from him. And this applies not only so that person doesn't feel isolated, that child in the countryside, but it applies to everyone, no matter what minority or majority we belong to, whether we're talking about ethnic minorities, yes, or linguistic minorities, or immigrants or sexual minorities, yes, everyone. Each member, once empowered and able to reach the value they are capable of, can contribute, yes, to society. And they contribute to society, first and foremost, to the economy. And by having such a vibrant economy, which a vibrant economy is necessary to have, how should I say, a high standard of living, a better world tomorrow than today. And here is the first difference compared to other political currents, especially with social democracy in this case. Because social democracy also wants to help the poor, yes, but progressivism goes further. It says, come on folks, let's do something more than that. And that's what was tried, right? And again, I'm going to talk a little about this in the video. That's what was tried with quotas for young people or with quotas for women. Because essentially, yes, and women have the ability to lead companies. Because of social customs, I don't know why or how, but they're not encouraged to get there. And this was an experiment that progressivism has carried out in recent years, in which it said, let's try to encourage this progress in such a way that we can empower women to lead companies as well. Because many of them might do a much better job than men do. And you see here that I'm talking about the economy again, because the economy is crucial in progressivism. Why? Because progressivism understands how the global economy works, which says the following. Folks, you can't do everything in Romania. You can't make mobile phones, computers, airplanes, medical devices, medicines, and clothes all in Romania. Why can't you do everything? Even with resources, you can't find every mineral in Romania's mountains or have all the people. Well, how many are we? We're still about 20 million, right? Right? As Romanians, you can't do everything, and you don't have all the scientific knowledge because Romanians don't know everything. Well, that's the truth. Yes, there's no way you can know everything. So then, but do you want to live well? And then you absolutely have to make an exchange on the global market. So, some make mobile phones, some make clothes, others make I don't know what, but you also have to do something truly competitive on the world market and sell it, right? For example, Dacia is a very good example. But how many things can't you also make and then sell? So the idea is to have a strong economy that produces something very good for you, competitive on the world market, so that you can sell it and buy other products, but to make that thing competitive on the world market, you can only do it with advanced technology. You can only do it with advanced scientific knowledge. So you need a society of scientific knowledge. You need a society where science is alive, where science grows. You need a society that values scientific research. This is the way, and that's where we want to get. This is what progressivism means. And I got carried away and I can't even finish this teaser. Yeah, because I want to get to liberalism. All right, I get how it's different from conservatism, how it's different from social democracy, but what about the liberals? Because the liberals also want to create a high-performing economy that really booms. Well, the liberals have a problem. They give very easily. In neoliberalism, what does neoliberalism mean? It means liberalism, where you push the accelerator pedal to the maximum and create a lot of disparities. My opinion is that this is what's happening right now in America, where I read figures like a third of America's population, yes. It has more than half of America's wealth. Basically, America's wealth is in just a few hands. There, the gap is very big, and the gap wasn't this big before in America's history. That's where progressivism started. But I won't go into history. I'll leave that for the upcoming videos. But what I want to say is this, okay? Neoliberalism means you've pushed too hard on the accelerator and separated progressivism, saying no. At some point we have to say stop, at some point. We have to make sure that all members of society benefit from scientific and technological progress. And I'll come back to this. Because that's how progressivism started. Because progressives were the ones who said, workers need rights, they should only work a certain number of hours, and so on. So basically, a small infusion of social democracy into liberalism, just like on the other side we talked about how progressivism is a small infusion of liberalism into social democracy. Here you can already see another trait of progressivism. Because in the case of neoliberalism, it acts as a brake. It says, hold on, let's think about ordinary people. We all need to benefit from scientific and technological progress. And so it acts as a brake where it's needed. Now, this idea is very, very important. Because progressivism doesn't mean progress at any cost. First and foremost, progressivism doesn't mean progress for the sake of progress. We don't want to create an ideal world, or as we used to say, a new man. We want just one thing. We want people to live longer, healthier lives with fewer diseases, including no cancer or cardiovascular diseases in the future. And to enjoy the future, life. People should live well, better tomorrow than today. That's what progressives want. And they don't want their own progress. Not even this progress at any cost, No, the idea that progressivism demands progress at any cost, bringing all kinds of devices and unknowns. No? Why? Because progressivism says you eventually need to hit the brakes. When you do things wrong, you have to put on the brakes. Because we always want a world for tomorrow that's better than today, meaning we have to think about those who come after us. Well, the best example is global warming. Progressives clearly say, hey, there's a problem with global warming. Actually, how did global warming appear? Well, it appeared because of an acceleration of capitalism, which was, let's say, the industrial age, right? Yes, the industrial age. Steam engines appeared, there was a need for coal, a lot of coal was burned, carbon dioxide was released, the accelerator pedal was pressed, and at that time, it didn't seem to be a problem. Not a bad thing, because people didn't know that carbon dioxide goes into the atmosphere and creates all kinds of problems. Yes, and it was fine. It's just that now, when we've discovered that indeed carbon dioxide increases the Earth's average temperature, yes. Now, progressives are among those who say, we need to put the brakes on these fossil fuels, we need to put the brakes on this technology, and eventually replace it with another technology. So progressivism can slow things down, but it doesn't say not at any cost. In fact, it says that when it's necessary, we put the brakes on progress. This explains the link between progressives and green movements. As for other political currents, because they're natural, because look at the nonsense they've done with global warming. That's what the Greens are saying too. They're saying, listen, people, we have to take care of this planet because it will be our children's planet. Yes. Not to get close to another political movement, in this case, the Green movement. And from here we draw another conclusion, and with this I'll finish. Otherwise, yes, I'll go on for too long and I want you to watch the other videos as well, okay? It's natural then that the progressive movement is associated with young people, because from the point of view of the progressive movement, thinking about a better tomorrow means focusing on the future and on young people. If you're building a city, do you state the problem? we haven't achieved much in the fight against global warming. It's clear that temperatures in Bucharest will rise, as well as in other cities, especially in the south of the country. Yes, and I don't know if we're building cities. Let's build them for the tough times ahead in terms of climate change. I mean, these cities need parks, they need trees, they need roads, bike lanes. Why not? So when you build something today, like a city, you're not just thinking about the people of today. You think about how people will live there in 50 years, so you think about today's young people. I don't have a conclusion for this teaser. There are more things, but I don't want to keep you long. Please watch those videos. I imagine they won't have them here, because, well, they're outside the area of interest for many people. But as much as you like it, please share these ideas because I find them relevant. At least for me, I've always known that I have these kinds of progressive ideas. But with these searches and, well, the readings I've had, my thoughts in order. And I realized, hey, it's okay to be progressive. It's okay. They cursed me out on television like you wouldn't believe. The progressive, that's how they cursed me. But it's not okay to be progressive. Because progressivism is part of political movements that are democratic. They have their place in society. I mean, I'm not going to insist anymore that it has nothing to do with Marxism. Yes, it has absolutely nothing to do with it. But it is one of these political movements that tries to provide some guidelines. To help us organize this space? Yes, together, so we live better tomorrow than today. And the essence of the progressive movement starts, as I said, from scientific knowledge. And that's probably the reason why I ended up in the progressive movement rather than in other currents. These all have value. Conservatism, social democracy, and liberalism are valuable. But I likely fit better in the progressive movement since I am truly close to science. But I have to wrap up, even if it's just a teaser. And I'll say, watch the upcoming videos. Really, please watch them, share them if you like them. I'll also make short videos from those things. And what can I tell you? If you haven't subscribed, you should subscribe to the channel. Do you know the story? I'm Christian Prasura, Physics Explained. You are cool. I'll see you next time. Hey, all the best. Goodbye.